What's going on, guys? My name is GC Watermelon and welcome back to another video. Today I have something a little different in store for you guys. More of a serious video than what you guys are usually used to, but hey, my channel's still kinda young, so still quite open to new ideas and directions for my channel to go in. So if you like this video and would like to see more of what I have in store for you today, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a beat. We've got just under a month to the Battlefield 5 beta set to drop, and an additional 45 days to the base game's actual release. And being primarily an Xbox player, I really can't help but feel like I've been sitting on the sidelines watching our PC friends at E3 play Battlefield 5, as well as the recent closed alpha. But thanks to them, we already know quite a lot about what to expect once the game is actually released, so there's really no need for me to go into any more detail about that. However, I still can't help but speculate what the direction DICE and EA will take with this title. From the very beginning, DICE told the community that this game would be something we've never seen before. With that said, I really am expecting something different with this title. And I'm not just talking about the war stories, I'm talking about the multiplayer experience itself. How can Battlefield make this World War II game different, more epic, and immersive than all its predecessors? After all, it's all been done before, right?
Wrong.
I've come to find that World War II video games usually stick to a similar formula of setting, generally never really veering away from the European, Russian, and Pacific theaters. I mean, the last time I can really remember a big franchise not sticking to this Big Three formula was when Call of Duty 2 took us back to the front lines of the British campaign in North Africa. I cannot confirm nor deny if it's been done again, but let me know in the comments if it has. That's just simply the last time that I vividly remember experiencing that theater. But it's already been confirmed that Battlefield 5 is taking us back to North Africa, and I'm very excited to see what they will have in store for us. It's a very good sign for the community that DICE is actually keeping their promises, but this now makes me even more curious. What should we expect in future DLCs? Which leads me to what I prepared for you today: the Southeast Asian Theater, the Malayan Campaign, and the fall of Singapore, the worst disaster in British military history. The Malayan Campaign was fought by Allied and Axis forces in Malaya from the 8th of December 1941 to the 31st of January 1942. The Japanese seized the opportunity to launch a brutal campaign offensive to expand its empire and expel white colonials from Asia. A Reddit post recently brought to light the interest of this theater in Battlefield 5, and I would simply like to further explain why I believe this would be a fun and an excellent new addition to the Battlefield 5 series in the future, by discussing map locations and weapons that would function in this theater. On the 8th of December 1941, Japan entered the Second World War by sending an invading force of 25,000 men to attack the British colony of Malaya. 5,000 of those troops, however, landed on a heavily defended beach at KOTA, BHARU, which brings us to our first map. The battle for KOTA, BHARU took place about 70 to 90 minutes before the attack on Pearl Harbor and the start of the Pacific War. While the attack on Pearl Harbor is famous and commemorated annually, the attack on KOTA, BHARU is little known and pretty much forgotten. Japanese troops landed across the KOTA, BHARU coastline, and at around midnight, forces landed under the cover of darkness. What then proceeded was a 3-hour battle between the Imperial Japanese Army and the British Indian Army, which was led by British officers. The Japanese had to fight their way up a heavily defended beach with machine gun placements in cement pillboxes, mortar fire, stationary cannon fire, air support, landmines, barbed wire, and trenching through heavy monsoon rains, floods, and fierce and high waves. Similar to the map Cape Hells in Battlefield 1, KOTA, BHARU would benefit most by being a conquest assault type of map, where the invading Japanese faction would have to bypass or flank defending British Indian forces and capture objectives. The Japanese faction, having their spawn point on ships out at sea, would be allowed landing craft, air support, as well as armored boats, which possibly could have been the Type T-14, armed with one machine gun and two 45.7cm torpedoes. On the British Indian side, which would most likely get thrown into the British faction altogether, would have the luxury of having heavily fortified cement pillboxes with stationary Brand machine guns, accompanied with mortars, 18-pounder field guns, and a squadron of the Australian Royal Air Force. In an after-action assessment, Billy Key, commander in charge of the 8th Indian Brigade, reported, "My men in the pillboxes fought with their utmost bravery. Either they were killed or their ammunition ran out. I sent reinforcements to restore the pillboxes at the river mouth, where the Japs had also landed, but could not do so effectively. We did pin the enemy down that day, but it was impossible to throw him out. I'll leave a link in the description should you wish to read the entire report." On the 11th of December 1941, Japanese forces easily defeated a large British Indian force in the Jitra of northern Malaya. As they moved further south, they captured British airfields, giving the Japanese complete air superiority. With complete freedom in the air, Japanese bombers leveled the city of Poyang, and it fell uncontested. In just 3 weeks, the Japanese had captured all of northern Malaya, and by the end of 1941, Japanese forces reached Kampar, where they would stand off with the Royal Artillery for 4 days. However, once the Japanese forces started to gain ground, the British were forced to retreat south, which brings us to the second possible map, Slim River. In January of 1942, here the Japanese army faced off against the British Indian and Argyll forces off the west coast of Malaya. Japanese tanks played a huge role in the Malayan Campaign, as the British brought none. They assumed that the Japanese wouldn't bring any, as the jungle terrain was too tough for tanks to get through. But at the Battle of the Slim River, tanks like the Type 95 Ha-Go easily broke through British Indian lines, leaving the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, the only unit in the British military to specialize in jungle warfare, as the last line of defense. In terms of creating the best multiplayer experience on this map, the British faction would have at their disposal the Dingo Scout Car, the Rover Light Armored Car, Bren carriers, 18-pounder field guns, and anti-tank guns. On this map, players would have to rely on teammates and explosives to take out enemy Japanese tanks. On the side of the Japanese faction, aside from having tank spawn advantage, would be allowed to use bicycles. Bicycle brigades were essential to the Japanese in the Malayan Campaign, as they covered more ground getting from point A to point B. I definitely would love to see this incorporated into both factions. It absolutely would bring a whole new meaning to the phrase "only in battlefield," if you were one way or another able to get a kill in one of these. However, for the sake of the Japanese having tank superiority, neither side should be allowed to use planes on this map. Slim River should solely be a close quarters up in your face type of map, similar to what we've seen in the Argonne Forest in Battlefield 1. Continuing to move further south down the Malayan Peninsula, on the 15th of January, Japanese forces clashed with Australian troops for the first time. I'll be super brief on this one because I had a pretty hard time mapping out how this map would be different from Slim River. I'll leave that to you guys, so please let me know in the comments how you think this battle will be a must-have in the game. However, it is here at the Battle of MUAR that the Allies won their first small victory of the Malayan Campaign. A column of tanks ran into 2 Australian anti-tank guns. They inflicted heavy casualties on the tanks, destroying each and every one, although it wouldn't be enough as the remaining British forces would be overrun by Japanese infantry and had to retreat across the Causeway Bridge into the heart of Singapore in order to hold up a last stand. As the Japanese scrambled away across the Straits River and past defending Australian forces, they began to make their way into the heart of Singapore, which brings us to our last and final map, Alexandra Hospital. The hospital lay in the path of the Japanese advance and has a lot of potential to be the only map in this DLC to have urban warfare. There was no actual fighting within the hospital itself, but for the sake of it being a video game, let's make this one interesting. Reports of the event suggest that British, Indian, and Australian soldiers defended the hospital for as long as possible from the exterior, as it was packed with wounded men that could not escape on their own. Once the Japanese had overrun the British positions, they proceeded to kill all the defenseless men and women inside. Once again, it is difficult to make out how this map would work, but to the best of my knowledge, this map could function best like the map we experienced in Battlefield 4, Siege of Shanghai. Just like in Conquest, players would spawn on opposite sides of the map and scramble to capture the central objective, which in this case would be the roof of Alexandra Hospital. Players would engage in fierce hand-to-hand combat, fighting door-to-door and up and down stairwells, all in an effort to capture objectives on top and in surrounding areas of the hospital. The only flaw of the idea, in my opinion, is bringing matters back to authenticity. The British faction had no air or armor support, yet the Japanese did. A vantage point on the roof could be extremely challenging and frustrating to players that don't have those extra means of assistance from the air and ground, on the British side at least. However, for the sake of having the best possible experience, I'm okay with keeping this map solely to infantry. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think this could work or not? Now, the weapons in this theater are not too hard to guess. It's already been confirmed that we will have the British faction in the European and North African theaters when the base game is actually released. So we should expect to see weapons and weapon variants like the Brand gun, Lee Enfield, Vickers gun, Lewis gun, and my personal favorite, the Sten gun. So in order to pick out new weapons for this particular DLC, we should look to Britain's colonies. Now, Australia, India, and New Zealand lacked the industry needed to forge vast amounts of weapons. So throughout the war, weapons were mostly adopted when they could be afforded from the United States and United Kingdom. However, there are a few unique toys that we can bring to the table. For starters, the support class would have the Carlton automatic rifle. Manufactured in New Zealand in late 1941, the Carlton was created with the purpose to act as a substitute for the Bren and Lewis gun light machine guns, which were chronically in short supply at the time. Rifles were converted from the obsolete Lee Metford and Lee Enfield rifles. It fires a .303 British cartridge and could load a 10-round Lee Enfield magazine, as well as a modified 30-round Bren magazine. A second variant of the gun, which was produced in Australia, uses the SMLE Mk3 for conversion. version. The two designs differ in external appearance. The New Zealand Carlton has a forward pistol grip and bipod, whilst the Australian lacked this, making it lighter and cleaner in appearance. But nonetheless, they both shared the same operating mechanism. For the medic class, we have the Austin SMG. The Austin was an Australian submachine gun inspired from the British Sten gun and developed during the Second World War. Australia was not in much of a position to purchase weapons from the United Kingdom and the United States as the war raged on in Europe, so they took to developing their own submachine guns. The weapon had a selective fire feature permitting it to fire in single and fully automatic modes. It fired a 9x19mm parabellum cartridge at 500 rounds per minute, and as the weapon did receive praise for being an improvement of the British Sten gun, it was reported to be unreliable and unsuited for jungle warfare. Now for the assault class, I couldn't really find any assault rifles that were manufactured or used by the British faction during that time period, but in the place of the assault rifle, we have the Owen gun. Known officially as the Owen machine carbine, was an Australian submachine gun designed in 1939. The Owen was the only entirely Australian designed and constructed service submachine gun of the Second World War and was used by the Australian Army in 1943 to the mid-1960s. Although it was somewhat bulky, the Owen became very popular with soldiers because of its reliability. It was so successful that it was also ordered by the United States and New Zealand. The New Zealanders fighting in the Guadalcanal and Solomon Island campaigns swapped their Thompson submachine guns for Owen guns as they found the Australian weapon to be more reliable. It shares the Austin gun's 9x19 parabellum cartridge and has a rate of fire of 700 rounds per minute. As for the sniper class, there really isn't anything in service that wasn't manufactured by the British. In this category, we can expect to see anything from the Lee Enfield series, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. I truly do value your opinions, and I'm always open to being corrected and informed. Other than that, guys, that's it for today's video. Just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to come by and watch this video. It's a new step up for me. Never made these kinds of videos before, so if you'd like to see more of this in the future, let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely keep them rolling out. But that's it for me today, guys. My name is GC Watermelon, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye now. Dum dum dum